is not available as of Monday. Is that right?
Bonjour, Monsieur le Président.
Maître Gélissen, good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honours. In fact, myself and the witness both have a difficulty. I have another mission. I'm taking a plane on Saturday morning, and I will be unavailable for 10 days. But the witness has just informed me that he has already arranged with the victim and witness section medical appointments on Monday afternoon in France. That's the situation. We really are in a bit of a bind here.
Well, believe me, I was informed about this yesterday evening, so it's not something which we have hidden. Okay. Yes, of course, we can sit extended hours until midnight. I have no problem on a daily basis, today and tomorrow. But I would also hear from the defense teams what they think, propose, whatever, suggest.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Maître Altit, I thank you, Mr. President, Your Honours. It is difficult for me to tell you exactly how much time, at this moment in time, my examination will last. Of course, I will leave the team for Mr. Charles Blégaudet to tell them about their examination, but I will know more at the end of the day. It seems to me to be extremely difficult for us to round everything up in 2 days, because the examination of the calling party lasted a little more than 3 days. I do not believe I will be able to come back upon everything, cover everything, and I'm practically sure I won't be able to in less than 2 days, in a day and 3/4, say. So I think it would be prudent to say to you that for the time being, I believe that my examination will last at least until Monday, and probably a good part of the day of Monday. I will know a little bit more. I'll be able to provide you an approximation at the end of today, but it'll still be an approximation.
Mr. Knoops?
Good morning, Mr. President. For our team, it's quite difficult to estimate the time we seek to examine the witness. It depends on, of course, the questions, the scope of the questions of the defense to Mr. Gbagbo. Of course,
that my examination will last at least until Monday, and probably a good part of the day of Monday. I will know a little.
As with P11, the court is mindful that our team will prevent any repetition, but still, having this in mind, it's difficult for us to say whether we need 1, 2 or 3 sessions. It's simply not possible to tell the court beforehand. And I think the court has to be mindful also of the potential re-examination. And therefore, my estimation that it is not realistic to finish this witness before tomorrow evening, even with extended hours, apart from, of course, the level of concentration we all need for this witness. That's, of course, for the court to decide, but I think it's really for our defense team a problem to face now the pressure we are potentially put under to finish before Monday morning. And maybe there is a solution that the witness could potentially go for his medical examination Monday and return Tuesday. Otherwise, I don't see an option that...
No, but I just wanted to ask, there is no pressure at all by...
So, in short, we cannot beforehand say to the court how much time our team needs. Thank you.
Okay. I think we come back to this during the day. I don't know. We will find a solution. Whatever the solution will be. But, of course, there is no, from our side, of course, no pressure put on anybody here, except on the prosecutor, who had already, went far over what the prosecutor itself estimated. So therefore, there is some pressure. And now you have exactly 20 minutes and 30 seconds, because I'm not looking at the timing of the court officer, but of my timing, and that at 10 o'clock, it's over. Yours the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, and don't worry, I am feeling the pressure.
Good.
Thank you. Good morning to you, Mr. Witness. Good morning to you.
Bonjour, Madame le Procureur.
The witness, good morning, Madam Prosecutor.
With where we left off yesterday, and in fairness to you, remind you what you said at the end of the last session. And this was related to the incident of the 3rd March 2011 in Abobo. And I was asking you about a meeting with Mongu, General Mongu, the État-Major, and about what was said. Let me just remind you what you told us Mongu said. It's the French transcript for yesterday, real time, at page 124, lines 1 to 14, and in the English real time transcript, page 139 at lines 13, sorry, 129 at lines 13 to 24. And I'll just take from within that section. You're telling us what he said, and you said this, but he said this at line 8. He said, Il n'y avait pas encore...
Quote, there were not any specific information yet. There wasn't any specific information yet. But they were doing everything possible for investigations to be conducted.
And you go on. So let me just ask you, please, to be clear on this issue. Did the SEMA, did he order an investigation into the incident of the 3rd March 2011?
À ma connaissance,
Answer. To my knowledge, I didn't hear speak of any instructions that the SEMA would have given in that regard. However, that kind of measure has to be initiated by another structure, for example, the Commissioner of the Government.
Fixing your mind again upon this meeting at the État-Major, at this meeting, did the SEMA deny responsibility of the FDS for this, for these events of the 3rd March in Abobo?
je n'ai pas le souvenir qu'il ait...
Answer. I do not recollect that he denied it, but I do not believe that he had enough information with regard to the events. He did not have enough information. Now, a little while later, because I wasn't always watching the television, I heard that the statement by the spokesperson was to the effect that the military elements were not involved in that incident. But generally speaking, in all of the discussions that we had there, the SEMA was not able to have the means and the witnesses out on the ground to know who was involved and who wasn't.
Okay, I'm going to just refer to your interview with the Office of the Prosecutor, and this, and it's at page 0477 and lines 557 to 563. Right, I'm going to read from line 557. You're describing what the SEMA said. You say, quote, in French, Il nous dit que la...
They told us that the national and international press, 7 women, are alleged to have been killed by the security forces in Operation Inabobo, and that this is not true because he cross-checked the information with his commanders to the effect that it is not true. So he is going to be drafting a statement to request this information, and it will be read by the spokesperson of the army over the 8 o'clock news.
Now, is that statement there, does that accurately record what you said in your interview?
Il y a juste une coquille.
Answer, there's just a little mistake. He's going to draft a response not to require, but to deny this information. It's just a mistake in the French, says the witness.
I ask you, reading this, what you see on the page and what you said there in the interview, does that accurately record what you said in the interview to the Office of the Prosecutor? Lines 557 to 563.
Affirmatif, Madame le Procureur.
Answer, yes indeed, Madam Prosecutor.
Is it true then that the SEMA at this meeting at the État-Major said to you that it was not true, the allegations against the FDS related to the 3rd March incident?
C'est ce que j'ai dit dans le document.
Answer, well, that's what I said in the document, and that's what I'm telling you. He said that he had information from the ground that came to him, and on the basis of that information, he was not certain that saying that his men were responsible was founded. So the statement that the spokesperson read over the television was to that effect.
Now, moving on from this, separately from the Commission of Inquiry that was set up on the 7th of January 2011, which we know about, to your knowledge, did the President, Mr. Gbagbo, order any specific investigations into civilian casualties during the post-electoral crisis?
Answer, I know that a commission of investigation was put in place, but I do not know the results of the investigations.
Okay, other than that, leave that to one side. Are you aware of any order or instructions from the President to conduct any investigations, any specific investigations into civilian casualties during the post-electoral crisis?
Answer. You mean all of the civilian victims during the entire post-election crisis?
Any investigation into any civilian casualties, leave aside the Commission of Inquiry, any specific investigations into civilian casualties of the crisis, to your knowledge?
Non, j'ai pas une idée de ça.
Answer, no, I don't have any idea about that.
just quickly, because I'm moving swiftly forward. We're going back to the report that we looked at yesterday, the SECOS report. Right? We'll bring it up quickly. It's 0048-1574 with the OTP prefix. We don't need to look at it again, but it's just there. Now, you told us yesterday, let me give you the reference. Yesterday in the transcript you said you became aware of this report in May or June 2011. And the reference in French to that is lines 13 to 15 of the French transcript at page 126. Sorry, it's lines 24 to 25 of the French real-time transcript, page 126. Get the right reference. If my friends can just take it from me, I'm not misleading. Okay, it's lines 14 to 15, page 126. Thank you to my colleague. Now, let me just ask you again, just to be clear about this. Who wrote this report?
Le rapport
Answer. This report was drafted by a Lieutenant Sipon.
To be clear, is your evidence that he wrote this report of his own initiative and that you didn't see it at the time in March 2011?
Je répète encore, Madame.
Madam Prosecutor, let me repeat once again that I received this document after the crisis between the months of May and June, and I explained the circumstances under which I received it. I was often called to the judges, by the judges, in a context of an investigation in the context of the crisis. I needed information, and as I did not have enough information, I said, give me information in such and such a context on such and such a fact. And I was given this document in the month of May or June 2011 after the crisis. When I read the document and when I remembered that the verbal reports that the SECOS communication officer gave me at the time, I realized that there was a little discrepancy between those documents and the facts or events that I was told about. Because at the time, no gendarme could leave the commando camp and go out into the field and bear testimony to what was going on. So I can't really give much credit to what these documents have to say. As I said, I received these documents after the post-election crisis.
Was it not Dje Bi, your commander of the Division de Renseignement? Was he not responsible for this report?
Puisque je vous dis que c'est le lieutenant Sipon.
As I told you, it was Lieutenant Sipon. Why are you going to talk about Captain Dje Bi? I believe that it was Lieutenant Sipon, this document. Dje Bi is the chief, but it was Lieutenant Sipon who, to my mind, furnished me with this document.
I'm going to go to your statement 0051-480-0480, page 481. And before that comes up, because it'll take a few seconds, let me just ask you this. This report Do you know what the purpose of it was, the purpose of this report? The purpose in writing it?
Moi qui suis demandeur,
Answer. I was the requester. I requested information for me to answer the questions put to me by the magistrates, the judges. My aim in requesting this information was to be in a position to answer the judges' questions, to have enough documentation in order to answer their questions. I had no other objective.
And was your interest related to the actions or activities of SECOS elements?
je ne comprends pas bien cette question.
Answer. I don't really understand that question by the prosecutor.
Whether SECOS elements were involved, specifically SECOS elements involved in the incident of 3rd of March?
Mais je vous ai dit ça hier.
Answer. Well, I told you that yesterday. That was the main purpose, but that was yesterday. This has nothing to do with the document that you're presenting to me now. I said to you yesterday that my first reaction was to verify, but then I was reassured because from the 26th of February, there was no longer any SECOS elements present in Abobo from the 26th of February. And the information contained herein occurred around, well, these facts occurred around the 3rd of March, so I was reassured in this regard.
With you, we have the transcript up now. At line 18 to 24, you say, en fait, j'ai demandé au chef de service.
In fact, I asked the chief of the unit, and it was he who gave me that. So I suppose, interviewer 1, who was it? Interviewee. It's one of his units. The chief of unit. It's captain. No, it's the police lieutenant. Well, there were two of them, a captain and a police lieutenant. Well, I'll say it was Dje Bi. You know, the head of the unit was Captain Dje Bi, or the police lieutenant who was responsible for this. One or the other, you know.
Is he responsible, Dje Bi, for this report, or just to be clear?
Je ne l'ai pas affirmé là.
Answer, I didn't state that therein. I didn't state that. The excerpt that you have just quoted from finishes as follows. One or the other, you know. So that means that I wasn't sure who gave me the document. It might be the drafter who signed, that was Lieutenant Sepin, or it could have been Captain Dje Bi, who was the chief of the unit, and the chief of Lieutenant Sepin. So as my recollection was not perfect, I said it was one or the other. So I wasn't sure myself.
And just quickly, because I have a few minutes left, I want to just call up one document quickly, and that is 0018-0105. And while we're waiting for that, I'm going to read another part of this transcript, and if Your Honours can take it from me that it's on the transcript and I'm reading it accurately, it's at page 487 of the same transcript from which I've been reading, 00510480. And you say this. You say at line 254, you're asked, quote, in French, et donc, vous avez...
And so you received what other verbal information at that moment in time? Interviewee. Well, SECOS element, oral too.
Oui, puisque c'est écrit là.
Answer, yes, in view of the fact that it's written there.
Receive verbal information at the time in March 2011 from Dje Bi?
Non, non, je précise.
Answer, no, no. Let me specify that the information that I received from the communications officer of SECOS. And as I said yesterday, and I believe that in the various statements that I made, I also made mention of this. What you're saying here and now, I do not believe that this concerns what or contradicts what I said. The first information that I gleaned when I received the information over the foreign radio, I talked to the communications person, lieutenant. I might have asked other intelligence officers subsequently, I might have asked them, but the first information that I gleaned was from the communications officer of the SECOS. Microphone, please.
Document just for a few seconds. Just look at the head of it, please. It's dated for the record 11 March. It's the document I called up earlier, 001.
Mr. President.
Soumettre à votre bien.
I have the honor of submitting to your attention the weekly activity report for the SECOS.
And it's entitled Période de 25 février au 6.
Period 27th of February to the 6th of March.
Two quick questions. Is this a report you recognise?
Celui qui est devant moi?
Answer, we're talking about the one in front of me? I've never seen it.
SECOS report, you haven't seen it?
Celui qui est devant moi là, c'est pas un rapport.
Answer, this is not a SECOS report. The one that is before me, it is not a SECOS report, Madam Prosecutor.
Okay, and just at the second page, you can just see that, just so you've seen the whole thing. We could just go to the next page. And I note, looking at it, there's nothing about a bobo in this report. Do you know anything about this report's purpose? Quick question.
No. The question is, do you know anything about this report's purpose?
Je ne sais même pas si c'est.
Answer, I don't even know whether it's a SECOS report because there's nothing here to tell me that. If you can give me it to me with in its entirety, with a headline or a title from the SECOS, then I might be able to have a look at it.
Thank you.
I have the hard copy. I can deal with that very quickly. I won't ask questions, but I can just allow the witness to have it since he's asked.
This report in
hard copy?
In hard copy.
If Your Honour's...
And that's the last question?
Yes, I mean, I don't have any further questions. It's just if he wanted to see it, he can see it.
Yes, let him see it and let him see it in hard copy.
Thank you. Good.
J'ai regardé, Madame le procureur.
Madam Prosecutor, I have looked.
Monsieur le Président, le document qui est devant moi.
Mr. President, the document before me was prepared by the personal chief of military staff of the Presidency of the Republic, and it is addressed to the President of the Republic. This is the formal document that I am looking at before me. That's what it is.
You have never seen it before. Do you confirm this? Or have you ever seen?
Second, I'm not the source of the document.
No further questions. Thank you, Your Honour.
Thank you very much. I would take this report, the witness is seen, to the record. So to give him a new number, because this one is the hard copy. I want the hard copy in the record. Now, thank you very much. It's time for the defense for Mr. Gbagbo to put questions to the witness, Mr. Witness. Now it's time for the defense for Mr. Gbagbo to put your questions. And I give the floor to Maître Altit for this. You have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Maître Altit, thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honours. Good morning, Mr. Witness. My name is Emmanuel Altit. I am lead counsel for Laurent Gbagbo. I am now going to put a few questions to you, and I please urge you to be concise and specific in your answers. Are we together? The witness, yes, counsel. Question. Okay, let us proceed.
Il a été question dans votre témoignage.
In your testimony on 28th March, you referred to a curfew that was imposed shortly before the second round of elections. I have a simple question for you. Before the second round, simple question. Who was the Prime Minister at the time? Answer, Mr. Soro Guillaume. Who was the Minister of Defense? Answer, I saw his photograph yesterday when he came to visit me at the Secos, but I've forgotten. I can see his face, but I don't remember his name. Yesterday on the video, we saw him when he came to visit me at the Secos. Question. Please tell us when you remember. Thank you. Question. Who was the Minister of the Interior? Mr. Emile Giri-Leyu.
That overlap, because now you're speaking both French, which is dangerous, because you tend to respond immediately. But please wait, because there is an English translation. Thank you.
Alors, vous nous avez parlé.
Question. You mentioned the ceasefire and the situation prevailing at the time. My question again is quite simple. Did the curfew make it possible for tensions to drop? Answer, yes. Question, very well. The representative of the prosecutor discussed with you a decree requisitioning National Armed Forces, decree of 14th November 2010. And I put a question to you again. Who was the Prime Minister at that time? Answer, Mr. Soro Guillaume. Question. Minister of Defense, you will tell us when you remember his name, correct? In any event, let me briefly show you the following document.
Alors, c'est CIV OTP.
CIV OTP 0018 0047 at page 0049.
Alors, merci. Pouvez-vous...
Thank you. Can you please enable us to read by going to Article 2 and zooming in so that we can read Article 2?
Merci.
Thank you. Mr. Witness, you can see to the top left of that paper, Article 2. Can you see that?
Vous me dites, hein?
Je vois.
The witness, yes, I can see.
Lis, il est très...
Very well. I will now read it. It's a very short article. Quote, this deployment shall be placed under the control of the CCI, the Integrated Control Command Center.
Nous dire ce qu'était...
End of quote. Can you tell us what the Centre de Commandement Intégré was, the CCI? Answer. The CCI was set up following the Ouagadougou Accords. The structure was one wherein the armed forces of Côte d'Ivoire and the Force Nouvelle were to learn to work together and to not be fearful of each other. Question. Very well. Do you therefore mean that the requisition being mentioned in this decree had as its purpose to seek cooperation between the government and the rebel forces? Answer. That is what happened in reality. What I'm saying is, under the authority of a general officer of the Ivorian Armed Forces, who was a gendarme, whose deputy was a colonel from the Force Nouvelle, the rebel forces, that structure was placed under the co-leadership of the Chief of General Staff of Côte d'Ivoire and the Chief of General Staff of the FAFN. A number of detachments were therefore made available to the structure to be part of the CCI for purposes of deployment during the electoral period as need be. Question. Very well. When you say that a number of detachments were made available, who made the detachments available? The authorities of the FDS? Is that correct? Answer. Yes. Question. Very well. Who was the commander of the CCI? Answer. The CCI was under the command of It was under the command of General Kwaku Nicolas, who today, at this very moment, is the Supreme Commander of the National Gendarmerie of Côte d'Ivoire.
D'accord.
Question. Very well. Now, if I have understood you, General Kwaku Nicolas had command over a bi-composite structure which was made up of the General Staff of the National Forces and the General Staff of the Force Rebelle or the Force Nouvelle. Is that the case? Answer, yes, that's correct. Question, who was, if you do know, who was the representative of the Force Nouvelle, former rebels, who was their representative on the CCI? Answer, there were a number of officers, but I wasn't close to the CCI. The highest ranking officer whom I knew was Colonel Karim Ouattara. Question, very well. Where was the headquarters of the Force Rebelle or the rebel forces physically located at that time? The headquarters and the general staff. Answer, in Boaké.
Qui dirigeait?
Question, who was the leader of the Force Rebelle or the rebel forces? The chief of general staff of the FAFN was General Soumaïla Bakayoko. His deputy was commander, the then commander, who was known as, he was known by the name Watao, Commander Watao.
D'accord.
Question, very well.
Si vous le savez, pouvez-vous...
If you do know, can you tell the court what the structure, well, you have just talked about the headquarters. What was the structure of the former rebels in military terms, please?
Je sais.
What I know is that they had a headquarters in Boaké. Then they divided up the territory under their control into various zones, and each zone was placed under a commander who was known as the Com Zone. I cannot be more specific than that. I don't know how many zones they had. So that, to my mind, was the structure of the FAFN.
Est-ce que chacun des com-zones dont vous venez...
Question. Did each of the com zones that you have just mentioned have troops under his command? Answer, yes. Question, very well. Com zones, as far as you know, or some of them, were any of them accused of any abuses and or excesses from the time they set up in the northern part of the country till the year 2011?
Il y avait des informations qui circulaient. Moi, j'ai...
Answer. There was information going around which I wasn't able to cross-check or confirm. There was information to the effect that there had been clashes in Boaké between some soldiers of the FAFN, leading to several deaths, including some senior officers of the FAFN. Question. To make things clear for purposes of understanding, are you talking about settling scores between the FAFN? Answer, I wouldn't use that term, but there were clashes and confrontations within the FAFN. Question, do you know the reasons for those clashes? Answer, no. Question, very well. As far as you know, were there any incidents in the northern part of the country during the second round of elections? Answer, yes. Question, can you tell us what you know about that? Answer, we were informed that several incidents had taken place in Korogo, and that in some instances people were prohibited from voting. Because of these very incidents, some of the representatives of one of the two candidates were not able to leave Korogo to go to Bouake with a view to supervising the elections. Now, there was also violence in Korogo targeted at the representatives of one of the two candidates.
D'accord.
Question. Very well. Acts of violence against the representatives of one of the two candidates. Which one? Answer, candidate Gbagbo. And the SEMA's concerns were triggered at that time because within the context of the CCI, he had deployed several detachments of the armed forces of Cote d'Ivoire to the north. And so when those acts of violence broke out, he was afraid that his men may be held back in the northern part of the country. He was concerned about this over several days.
Vous disiez à l'instant que les représentants d'un des deux candidats n'avaient pas pu aller même.
A short while ago, you said that some representatives of one of the two candidates were not able to go to Korogo. The representatives of which of the two candidates? Answer, we were informed that some of the representatives of candidate Gbagbo who were going to Korogo were held back in Bouake and were therefore unable to reach Korogo on the day of the election.
D'accord.
Question, very well. You also testified that in Korogo, a number of voters were prohibited from voting. Who stopped them from voting? Answer, well, it was by those who were in charge of providing security for the polling stations, as well as some young people who were not under any, who were not being controlled.
Ils ont été empêchés de voter. Faisons simple, je sais que la situation...
Now, when you say they were prohibited or stopped, now, can you simplify that for us so that we can understand? Were they stopped or prohibited from voting by the pro-Gbagbo or the pro-Ouattara? Answer, they were pro-Gbagbo. So you yourself, you can understand what happened. They were pro-Gbagbo. So the pro-Gbagbo could not have stopped the pro-Gbagbo from voting.
Vous savez, après, nous aurons tout ce que vous avez dit.
Now, we are taking down everything you have said, and we want the record to be very clear. Are you saying that the pro-Gbagbos were stopped from voting by the pro-Ouattara? Is that correct? Answer, yes. Not only in Korogo, but also in other areas where there were a few skirmishes and where some pro-Gbagbo teams also objected to pro-Ouattara voters voting. So it happened in a number of areas, but what stood out was what happened in Korogo, in Bouaké. Very well. So, when you were being questioned by the representative of the OTP, you told the court that as of 4 December 2010, things were not going too well. And particularly in Abobo. And so my question is as follows. On the 4th of December, shortly after the second round, were there many FDS-related problems? Question. Answer. There was already tension upon the announcement of the first set of results. First at the Gulf, and then second at the Plateau, at the presidency of the Republic. It is at that time that things started to heat up. Then there were attacks against the armed forces, the FDS, in Abobo at that time.
Nous sommes jusqu'au 4 décembre. Hein?
We're talking about the 4th of December here. So were there already victims within the ranks of the FDS and within the civilian population? Answer. At PK 18 in Abobo, and I said this yesterday when I was being examined by the prosecutor, a residential building used by the FDS was torched by demonstrators. Soldiers and policemen were burnt alive in that building. Some police officers were killed by bullet shots, still in Abobo. And there were a number of cases like that in different areas. And at the same time, there were also clashes leading to the death of some civilians as well. Question. Very well. Now, who launched the attacks against the FDS? Answer. Well, a few days later, a few weeks later, we found out that it was the Commando Invisible. But at the time, it was not possible to know. Question. Very well. After the 4th of December and up to the 16th of December, the time of the march, let us use that as a temporary bearing. From the 4th of December to the 16th of December, the situation was similar. Is that your testimony? Answer. Yes, things continued in the same vein, but maybe not with the same intensity. Things didn't slow down, so to speak. Question. Very well.
Alors, vous avez cité à l'instant.
Question. You mentioned the Commando Invisible a short moment ago. Who? What was the Commando Invisible? It was invisible.
Le leader.
Well, at least the leader who claimed to be the leader of that invisible commando was Ibe.
D'accord. Pour commettre ces attaques, vous nous avez...
Question. Very well. In order to commit these attacks, you gave us examples of the attacks. Did the Commando Invisible have any heavy weaponry?
Madame le procureur m'a
Answer. When the Madam Prosecutor put the question to me yesterday, I gave a number of situations that really touched us. It was the use of RPG-7 against law enforcement officers in the town. And they were burnt to death in their vehicles at the Abobo intersection, right in the centre of town. The RPG-7 is not a heavy weapon in the classification of military weapons. We don't put that as a heavy weapon, but it does have a devastating, widespread effect, because specifically it is an anti-tank weapon.
Est-ce qu'ils avaient des mortiers?
Question. Very well. Did they have any mortars?
Probablement, mais
Answer. Probably, but I didn't see the effects of any. They must have been equipped with them, but I can't confirm that. But they must have been equipped.
Alors, je vais vous...
Question. Well, I'm going to quote to you an excerpt of your prior statement that you made to the investigators of the Office of the Prosecutor. At number 0016-0130, page 0144. Page 0144.
Et je vais citer.
And I'm going to quote interviewee, that is to say you. It was the mortars with which we fire shells, but that during the discussion that I had yesterday with my friend, those who were attacking the troops also had the same weaponry and mortars as well. The commando, it says, the invisible commando also had mortars. It was not only army that had mortars. The invisible commando also had mortars. The Commando Invisible also had mortars. It's a good thing to know that. I remember only too well that they had, and the investigator interrupts you saying, okay, end of quote.
Vous avez bien entendu ce que je...
So you heard what I said to you, and you have before you your answer rather that you provided to the investigator, and we can see, sir, that the investigator of the Office of the Prosecutor interrupts you when you're beginning to furnish an explanation with regard to the usage of mortars by the Commando Invisible. Can you finish your line of thought or your train of thought, because you were in mid-flow? Could you please finish your train of thought in response to the question put to you by the investigator of the Office of the Prosecutor with regard to these mortars? Answer. Counsel, I wanted to tell you that the investigator from the Office of the Prosecutor is not in a position to interrupt me. If I had something to say, I would have said so. He was not in a position to interrupt me.
Also asked for a date for the questions around use of mortars. Could we have a date, please? I'd be grateful.
It's in the statement.
No, I mean for the issue of use of mortars, just to have that further elaboration.
No, the question was, well, later, because I think there is other questions before that.
Oui, Monsieur le Président, je crains qu'il y ait...
Maître Altid, yes, Mr. President, I think that there are a number of questions to be put before any possible re-examination. That's how it is. And as to my question, I am quoting the prior statement of the witness. There we are. That's as far as it goes.
Monsieur, je voudrais...
That's as far as it goes. But, sir, I would like you to answer my question, which is, what can you tell us in addition? What can you give us as explanation or further details for us to understand what's going on? Because that's the issue here, you understand. Answer. Thank you. I just wanted to bring this clarification, saying to you that the investigator of the Office of the Prosecutor couldn't have interrupted my train of thought if I had any to provide, and go to the end of what my train of thought. Now, with regard to the weapons of the Commando Invisible, I talked to a friend who, he is a soldier. He was close to the operations because I wasn't, and he confirmed to me that indeed the Commando Invisible did have mortars. But subsequent to the crisis, the second half of April, weapons that were often circulating, going from one side of the other to Abidjan, we could see mortars moving around. Maybe they were going back to the base. We saw, you know, heavy weaponry such as cannons and mortars that weren't being used, but they were moving around. Maybe they were going to the warehouse. They were going to be put away, maybe. We saw that. I saw that in front of the cote de gdarmerie, which is a major road. I saw it with my own eyes. But it wasn't the armed forces of Côte d'Ivoire that had that equipment. This was the equipment either of the rebellion or of the Commando Invisible.
Donc, qu'on comprenne bien.
Question. For us to understand correctly, you yourself saw with your very own eyes equipment, because you're talking here about mortars and cannons. Is that what we're talking about? Was that in Abidjan before your very...
Look, is there...
Answer. It seemed to me that it was 75mm cannons. I think it was 75mm cannons. I might be wrong. But the diameter seemed to correspond far more to the 75mm cannons, because these are cannons that are pulled.
Ces colonnes comprenaient-elles des...
Question. Did these columns comprise vehicles equipped with machine guns? Answer, yes.
Quel type de mitrailleuse?
Question. What type of machine gun, if you were able to ascertain? Answer. There were 12.7 machine guns. There were PKM light machine guns. That's what I saw on the vehicles, because often there were patrols going around the town that were organized with this type of vehicle. And there were many vehicles or patrols around town after the crisis that were equipped with this. Question. We understand that these were rebel patrols. Answer, yes, that are now called the FRCI. Question. So these are former rebel who became FAFN and then FRCI. Is that correct? Answer, yes.
Ce matériel
Question. This equipment belonging to the forces that are not now the invisible commando but quasi-official rebel military, did it seem to be new to you when you saw it? Answer, I can't confirm that. It's military equipment. I can't say whether it was new or old. I'm not in a position to confirm that. Question, very well. But you did tell us yesterday, it would seem to me, that there was an embargo on weapons to Côte d'Ivoire, and that with regard to the governmental forces, they were regularly visited by inspectors who were verifying that the embargo was indeed respected. So, how, to your knowledge, how did the rebel forces, or former rebel forces who became AFN-FRCI, how did they get their hands on all of that equipment that could, or was difficult for them to hide? That wasn't it submitted to an embargo? What do you know about it, if you know anything at all?
Je n'avais pas les moyens.
Answer, I didn't have the means to put a date on the acquisition of that equipment. Maybe this was equipment that they obtained before the embargo was in place. I don't know. But what did surprise us during the crisis was that they apparently had not run out of ammunition and had not run out of weaponry, whilst we were really having a hard time.
est-il juste de dire
Question, would it be correct to say that they were better equipped and better armed than the government forces? Answer, I wouldn't go that far, but I would say that they had the equipment they needed.
D'accord.
Question, very well.
Alors, je vais vous demander
Question. So, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, for us to specify the positions of the Commando Invisible in Abidjan. You annotated a map during your prior statement to the OTP, and I think it would be faster for us if we could bring up this map, which is CIV OTP 0007-0034.
What can be redacted in a map? The name of a street or
Écoutez, c'est une carte qui provient
Well, this is a map that comes from the OTP, and yes, indeed, a priori, I agree with you that nothing can be redacted from a map, but this comes from the Office of the Prosecutor, so maybe there is a specific point.
The unredacted version is being displayed right now.
Can you just give me the item number and then I can quickly check? This is to my learned friend. Thank you.
le numéro 11.
Maître à titre, number 11.
Yes, it's only identifying the witness, so it's fine to be public. Yes, thank you.
Alors, monsieur, Vous voyez la...
Question. So, sir, do you have the map before you? Answer yes.
Est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire, il y a des cercles...
Question. Can you tell us, there are orange circles. Can you tell us what they are?
Ce sont des endroits qui étaient...
Answer. These are locations that were acknowledged to be positions held by the commando invisible.
D'accord.
Question. Very well. In reading this map, would it be true to say that the commando invisible occupied or blocked the major roads in Abobo? Answer yes. Not only did they control the major roads, but because they were fluid, they were everywhere in Abobo, and as they were not identifiable, they were mixed in with the population everywhere. Question. Very well. Can you confirm that they also, the members of the Commando Invisible, occupied the area around the town hall of Abobo and the Banco neighborhood? Answer yes.
Alors, pour les besoins d'enregistrement...
Question. So, for the record, it was a yes. I think we heard it. Did the Commando Invisible lead incursions further south or in other areas? Answer. Yes. Notably in Adjamé, at the Lacas lieu-dit in Adjamé, at Lacas in Adjamé.
Vous avez une base là.
Do you mean thereby that they had a base there? Answer no, they led incursions there. Question. Very well.
Alors, vous nous avez dit et répété aujourd'hui.
Question. You said and repeated today that on the one hand, from the 26th of February, the Secos no longer went to Abobo, and that on the other hand, in response to a question put to you by the OTP with regard to the events of the 3rd March, and on the other hand, that the gendarmes who were in Abobo did no longer come out. You went on to say that they were closed up in their barracks, and you said that those barracks were the commando camp. As you said this in 2 pieces, I want you to say this very clearly. The place or location that you are talking about, where you say it was the only location where there were gendarmes still at the beginning of March, was that Camp Commando in Abobo? Answer, yes indeed. Question. Very well. Once again, I'm going to put a question to you that might be obvious to you, but it's important to us. Did you mean to say, when explaining all of this to us, that the members of the FDS who were still in Commando Camp or Camp Commando were entirely surrounded? Answer, no, they were not surrounded, but the level of hostility in Abobo had become such that you couldn't even go out without being fearful of the first person that you chanced upon. The gendarme couldn't go out of the door without wondering who the first person they met was, because they could easily be an armed member of the Commando Invisible.
D'accord. Ce commando invisible qui est...
Question. Very well. And this commando invisible that was everywhere, as you say, did it also attack the civilian population? Answer. Well, I am going to tell you about a situation. The village of Anonkwa, the inhabitants of said village were massacred. Anonkwa is a village of Abobo, and the villagers who sought refuge in either the church or elsewhere within the village were massacred. I don't even know the number of victims. And the consequences that we endured with regard to that was that the Chief of General Staff was part of that community, and he was affected for the duration of the crisis. He was a member of that community, the Ebrier. For him to know that it was one of his, who he was one of those people, the chef, the Chief of General Staff, who was not able to protect his people, he was mortified by this until the very end of the crisis. He was unhappy. Question. For this to be clear for the record, this civilian population, the Ebrier you're talking about, were massacred by whom?
Par le commando invisible.
Answer. By the commando invisible. Question. Very well. Who was the leader of the commando invisible that committed said massacre, if you know? Answer. We didn't have any information with regard to the detachment, but the head of the commando invisible was IB.
D'accord.
Question. Very well. So, with this situation, the civilian population, I'm not only talking about the Ebrier people whom you just talked about, did they flee Abobo? Answer. There was a mass exodus towards the south. A lot of the population was out in the streets going towards the south to Adjamé, to the west Yopougon, to the southeast Cocody, Angrais. It was a mass movement of the population seeking refuge in the south. Question. And more or less what moment in time was that? Answer. I don't have the dates in mind, but it was at the moment in time when the attacks upon those people that I just described had traumatized the people. Question. Very well. So what you're saying to us is that a major part of the population of Abobo fled the violent acts committed by the Commando Invisible and sought refuge in the other neighborhoods of Abidjan, where they spent the rest of the crisis. Is that right? Answer. Yes, indeed.
Why do you always repeat what he said, which is perfectly clear? So you always, at the end, you summarize what is said, what is perfectly clear on the record. It's a bit of a...
Monsieur le Président, je suis heureux.
Maître Altit, Mr. President, I am very happy that it is crystal clear.
Et cela m'amène d'ailleurs...
And this leads me, what is more, to tell you that I'm going to be moving on to another subject area, and I don't know whether you want us to rise now.
I don't know if the subject area is a long one. Probably we can stop here and come back at 11:30. Okay. Thank you very much. The hearing is adjourned.
All rise.